Welcome to the Issues of Sports. Happy holidays. And it's my pleasure to be back with Rudy Rude Dog Reyes. I am EMAC, Evan Makovsky. Rude Dog, happy holidays. I see you got the blurred background. Are things a little blurry in your life right now?
Little blurry, I would say. Christmas is bringing the burr to the Reno, Nevada area. So, needless to say, things are moving right along, except for the snow. We haven't got any snow yet, so I'm waiting for that to happen. And of course, I don't like driving in the snow. So, here we are in the holiday season where things are good for some teams and for other teams are hanging on by a thread. And of course, as we're well aware of, the Steelers just won their last game against the Baltimore Ravens and, in fact, own the AFC North, at least for now. But
Yes,
the
I
bigger
do.
question I have for you, EMAC, is what's going on with Mike Tomlin?
Well, that's what we're here to talk about, Mike Tomlin's future here on the Issues of Sports. And it's been talked about. They just beat the Ravens, as you said, and are alone in first place. But Mike Tomlin, certainly they've called for his head in Pittsburgh with Chance this year. And he's been the head coach. He's the longest tenured coach in the National Football League. Another coach, so you mentioned the Baltimore Ravens, is John Harbaugh, and there's been talks about him as well, but we're not focusing on him today. If John Harbaugh were to get cut loose, by the way, as a Giants fan, I wouldn't mind seeing the Giants hop on John Harbaugh right away. I think he's a very good NFL football coach. But Mike Tomlin, kind of the dichotomy and the mixed. He has not won a playoff game since 2016. And the rub would be this. You take a look, and sure, cross sports, the New York Knicks fired Tom Thibodeau after taking the Knicks to the conference finals for the first time in 25 years. They fired him after they lost to the Indiana Pacers last spring, right before the summer. And so the Mike Tomlin thing is like, okay, you haven't had a losing season, but you really haven't made much, if any, noise in the playoffs. Now, it's my understanding that the Steelers, I believe they've had like 3 different coaches since 1941, but that they're not going to fire him. Okay. He would have to sort of mutually part ways, stay on out. But my first initial take that I'd like you to respond to is I don't think, based off the Knicks comparison I gave you, that the heat on Mike Tomlin is unfair when you haven't won a playoff game in whatever it is, 9 years in the NFL.
Well, in the NFL means not for long, but unfortunately, we know Mike Tomlin has been with Pittsburgh for quite a long time. Again, longest tenured coach. It's the concern that I have for Mike Tomlin is this. It's good to boast that you have a 500, nothing below 500, never had a losing season. That's great and wonderful. I give him props for everything that he has done while with the Steelers. Now, let's go back a little bit. So, when you talk about Hall of Fame coaches like Bill Cowher, former coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers prior to Mike Tomlin being hired, very young Mike Tomlin, I might add, there were a lot of losing seasons under Bill Cowher. Let's just call it what it is. And the Rooney family predominantly does not take kindly to losing like any other ownership group does in the National Football League. However, this is a big problem because, yes, 500 is great. Going for lack of a better term, going undefeated in the sense of having a losing record, that hasn't happened in Pittsburgh under Mike Tomlin. The problem is that it's consistency in the playoffs that has been his Achilles heel. Now, going back to the Bill Cowher comparison, he, by comparison to him and the players that Bill Cowher had, were Bill Cowher's players, meaning that some of the players, not all, but the majority of players that were on the offense, defense, and special teams were players that Bill Cowher won Super Bowl 40 with. And then here goes Mike Tomlin under and wins Super Bowl 43 with the same players. However, lost Super Bowl 45 against Green Bay Packers. As we know, turmoil fumbles, turnovers, things of that nature basically caused this game to go awry. To your point, I think the biggest rub, if I was let's just say, a chef, and I wanted to use the best rub possible, I wouldn't use the Mike Tomlin rub because it's not going to taste very good. Fans don't like the taste, and to be honest with you, it stinks. So 500 above is good. Losing seasons in the playoffs, because that's 0-0. Once you hit playoff contention, it's 0-0. You're starting all over again. And right now, because of the no trade clause in 2026 on March 1st, this could be a breaking situation. You had mentioned John Harbaugh. Could he be in the running for maybe the next Steelers coach? No. Maybe. It wouldn't be a bad idea, but we know that that's not going to be a big favorite under current Steelers fans. And predominantly, you don't pick from your own division for head coaches. So, especially not the AFC North, which is still one of the most battle-tested groups, and we can go on about that aspect. But think about this, Emac. I'm going to bounce this question off of you. When you look at the AFC right now, and you look at the NFC has stronger contenders within the NFC, unlike the AFC. Teams are struggling mightily right now against division foes within the AFC, making it a weaker conference as opposed to the NFC. And when I say that, you had teams like the Steelers, who are barely holding water, owning the division for now, but will they get into playoff contention? And if so, do they go the long run? That is going to be the difference between Mike Tomlin getting an extension and or play it out until 2027 when his contract expires.
He's probably going to go to the Hall of Fame, but he's won one Super Bowl. He has, I know he just tied Dan Reeves. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but for 10th on the wins list for the regular season or something like that. So is he, I think players like him. Yes, I do. I think players like him. But in today's NFL, you get like 2 years, 3 years, and you have to kind of, I don't know.
Produce.
Yeah, and produce to me means like make a little bit of a dent and maybe win a playoff game. I mean, the Houston Texans won a playoff game last year, and they weren't that good last year. They're better this year with their defense. Certainly, they're a better team than they were a year ago. But I'm just saying, has Tomlin kind of just, with an organization that, and maybe if he wasn't with the Steelers, maybe he would be fired. That's the other thing, is maybe he would be fired if they weren't, I think he's in good with ownership is at least the word. And I think he will be retained. If I had to bet, you never know that he's going to, they're going to pick up the option for 2027, and they're going to, now, if the Steelers make the playoffs and let's say get soundly beat in, let's say, a wild card game, is it possible that anything, nothing is impossible? And we're not in his head either, what he wants to do. But I'm not sure that 2025 going forward, the coaching rules apply to Mike Tomlin because of his tenure. Because to go 9, it's his tenure that allows him to go 9 years without winning a playoff game.
Well, I will say this, using your Tom Thibodeau example. Tom Thibodeau was a good coach. A great coach? No. A good coach? Yes. Was he good for the Knicks down the stretch? Well, I mean, Tom Thibodeau did not win a championship.
No, that's true. I was at, by the way, that Steelers championship in Tampa, when Santonio Holmes made that catch, or that Super Bowl. I was there for that, his championship. Yeah. But
my point is this.
Go ahead, though.
Would you put up the measuring stick between what Tom Thibodeau had done by comparison to the winningness of Mike Tomlin to the regular season? It's kind of apart. considering what Tom Thibodeau had to contend with, which were players that didn't want to play together. You had personality issues. You had conflict. It says a lot to be a coach in the NBA and win under those circumstances to get you to a playoff position you had not been in for nearly a decade. Okay, let's start with that. However, Mike Tomlin in the regular season is kind of like the opposite, right? Mike Tomlin has won a championship, has taken his team to, win one, lose one. So, as much as we want to boast about Mike Tomlin's tenure and the fact that he could end up sticking around for with 27 if the team picks up his option, I believe that when you look at 2025, where we're at right now, and the landscape of the National Football League and how weak the Steelers team is currently, and you heard all the whining about, players saying, well, he need be in the gut and complaining about the calls and things of that nature. Look, refs don't win the game for you. They'll lose the game. They'll help you lose the game. And you have makeup calls without question. Those do exist. It's not like we're looking for the Sasquatch, because calls go both directions, some favorable, some not. Face masks are missed all the time. Chop blocks are missed. Grabs and holds were missed. We've seen the Philadelphia Eagles with Mailata holding onto somebody's face mask with things that get missed. That was one of them. My point is this.
Yeah.
When you look at the winning ways of the current head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, the only reason why he's still around is because he won a Super Bowl last year.
Yes, I agree with that, by the way. It seems like he doesn't get much respect. It seems like from people inside the league, from fans, from the media, he does not get. Now, whether that's warranted or not, but to your point, he won a Super Bowl, so that's going to give him a level of immunity, but he also is a coach, and granted it's in the same state as Mike Tomlin, but it's a different culture in Philadelphia where, they will,
They'll crucify you.
yes,
They will
quick.
eat you alive.
Like, yeah, you can wear, forget about what you did for them 5 minutes ago. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's it.
Hey, if they could throw snowballs at Santa Claus, they can get rid of Nick Sirianni without blinking and maybe throw some snowballs at him just for a bonus. And it wouldn't even matter. They'd still be able to sleep at night.
Maybe Tomlin, not maybe, I think he has been insulated by the organization that he coaches for, and good for him. But here's another one. Would you rather be, okay, not having a losing season? I mean, this is an obvious answer. Would you rather be, the Patriots are much better than the Steelers this year? Okay, they had 2 down years, whatever, the last year with Belichick and last year with Gerard Mayo, and he was one and done. But they are top of the heap right now. Whether, I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, but they're top of the heap. And then since Mike Tomlin has won his Super Bowl, that organization, I don't even care to count, but has won like 3 Super Bowls and has retooled, and they're better than the Steelers. So you can make an argument that they got a better coach in Mike Vrabel, who did a good job with Tennessee when he was with Tennessee. So would you rather be New England and their situation and their, since Mike Tomlin won the Super Bowl, it's a no-brainer that organization has done a better job than the Pittsburgh Steelers.
There's no doubt about it. When you look at draft positioning, when you look at the guys that they acquired in the 2024 NFL draft to play in that season, 2025 NFL draft, everything that they had done, they were building towards. Robert Kraft ensured that, and Vrabel was assured of that. They were not going to fall behind like they did last year with a horrible defense, quarterback carousel city. There was just so much wrong with that team. And not necessarily was it because of Gerard Mayo that they didn't do very well in. It wasn't because only of Bill Belichick as to why they didn't do very good under him. It was because these guys are being phased out. Bill Belichick phased out. Gerard Mayo phased out. Now, here comes another Mike in Vrabel, who's done an absolutely stellar job there in New England.
Really good coach. Really good coach.
He's a very good coach. Very good coach. The reason why he didn't make it in Tennessee was because of ownership. Ownership in Tennessee has been shaky at best. They fired coaches for no reason for less than a bag of popcorn costs at a grocery store or at a ballpark. So when you look at Mike Tomlin, when you talk about insulation and his ability to keep this team up and going beyond a 500 record, yes, let's give him exemplary credit for that, where credit is deserved. But when you look at his playoff record, it is pathetic. It's not very good. That's why when they lost at home the Sunday before last, they were calling for Mike Tomlin's head, as they should have. Did he pay much attention to it? I guarantee you, in some way, shape, or form, he did pay attention to it. But was it enough to shake his tree? I think so, to a point where they did what they did this past Sunday. But they have an uphill battle because now they're facing a team who is pushing for playoff contention, the Miami Dolphins, on Monday Night Football. And on top of that, can they get it done at home against a team with a losing record? That's a bigger question. We see what happened when they faced off against the Buffalo Bills. They got demolished. They were destroyed at Acrisure. They allowed more yards per run at Acrisure in all-time Acrisure/Heinz Field history. So put that out there as well. Why? Because Mike Tomlin is supposed to be a defensive mastermind. Did not show up at that game at all whatsoever. So unless Mike Tomlin, and the tail of the tape is going to be 2025 as to whether he gets them in the season, into contention, deep into the playoffs. If the team picks up his clause, I would be surprised if they don't make the playoffs this year, just like they fail to make it every other year. So that's where I stand in this right now.
Here's some predictions before we get out of here. Number one, I think the Steelers are going to pick up his option, and I think Mike Tomlin's going to come back no matter what happens. I could be wrong.
Correct.
I don't know what's going on. Number two, I think the Steelers will make the playoffs. Whether they'll win one game in the playoffs or not might be matchup oriented. Maybe maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I would say conclusively, I do not think that the heat and the blowback on him is unfair based on the climate that most coaches have to deal with. I think that he doesn't. Again, I'm not saying it's easy to win a Super Bowl. I know Mike McCarthy's only got one, and a lot of good coaches. Bill Cowher's got one. You win one, that's great, but one is not three, okay? And it's not necessarily two, okay? Like a Bill Parcells or whatever. And he also, I think I said he could be fired if he was with a different organization, and you brought up the Eagles, which is a good point. Sometimes the way he conducts himself, he gets away with things in Pittsburgh, the way he treats the media, where just very arrogantly and will make wisecrack or just condescending comments, and not occasionally, like I don't want
consistently.
I wouldn't say consistently, but I would say
every other time he's at the podium, perhaps.
I'll go in the middle, semi-regularly. Okay, that where that and he seems to think that he's I don't know, maybe he has a little more
anonymity
or just more clout than he should, because he hasn't won 5 Super Bowls or whatever. Like even say what you will, Belichick got expired in New England especially after Brady left, and we saw his drafting and whatnot. Mike Tomlin's the longest tenured coach, and he's won 1 Super Bowl, and he hasn't won a playoff game in a decade. And damn it, you have the answer just like every other coach does, or whatever. So
the problem is he doesn't have to answer to ownership, because he's the longest tenured coach in the National Football League. So for him to feel the need to explain himself, maybe he doesn't even need to explain himself to the organization.
Right,
maybe he feels that he's above that.
Or maybe the organization has given him the assurances that he's just fine, and it doesn't matter if the fans scream for his head or the media screams for his head or speculates.
The scrutiny is well warranted. It's well warranted. He has no excuse why his team got demolished at home against the Bills team, who is mediocre at best. at best in the
Yeah,
Buffalo
the Bills have
Bills.
not been consistent this year, not to get off topic, but you're correct. So,
No, not at all.
I mean,
Give me consistency. If you were to say right now 7-6 was going to be the Steelers' record, I probably would have laughed for two reasons and two reasons only. One word is Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers is still a darn good quarterback. I mean, heck, the Indianapolis Colts just picked up Philip Rivers, who's been retired from the National Football League for years, and now he could be starting. Are you serious? So, no one's to say that anybody is out of the question. He's 45.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I know Joe Flacco said I forgot if it was Tom Pelissero, but he told, I think it was Pelissero, that he thinks he'll have his arm strength and he could play till 50. Maybe he can. God bless him. If he, I'm just saying,
he's got to have the protection at the line. But when you look at Aaron Rodgers, that's just one example as to why the Steelers team could go. DK Metcalf was an okay free agent acquisition. It wasn't the greatest move, but
Great.
give me a number 2 wide receiver. Just name one other than Terrell Austin.
I don't even know who right now.
That's it. That's really who their stars are right now on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah, they went in free agency. They picked up Scanlon. Wonderful. They picked up Adam Thielen. Okay, great.
Yeah.
But
he
had his first catch as a Steeler. Multiple, Pro Bowl guy. But it's done nothing up to this point to be 7-6. The offensive line was learning on the job for the last 3 years. Where are they at right now? They're probably a little bit better than they were 3 years ago.
Yeah,
a lot better than they were 2 years ago. And right now, they're still learning on the job with not really a patchwork offensive line. I think there's been a lot of consistency there. But at the same token, you get against teams that have very strong defenses, like you mentioned the Houston Texans, who had a horrible defense last year, but had a great offense. Now it's kind of like on the other side, where at times you find CJ Stroud getting to guys like a couple other wide receivers, and it's been okay there. It hasn't been stellar by any means, but they find ways to win. The Steelers team seems to find ways to lose instead.
Well, that's going to wrap things up. My prediction is Mike Tomlin will get his option picked up, although you never know. I wouldn't be shocked, but I think it will have to come. If Mike Tomlin departs, I think it's going to have to come from Mike Tomlin. I don't think the Steelers are going to fire him.
No, not at all. And I'll give you my prediction. The scrutiny is warranted for Mike Tomlin right now at 7-6. Okay, yes, they're above 500. Big whoopee. However, if they pick up that means that whatever they did in the draft is going to assure Mike Tomlin a place to play and coach in, and playing coach, that is, with the Steelers organization in 2027. So I think it depends on where they end up this year and what they get in the draft next year, with some pickups, and they're going to have to really reconstruct their roster to be a little bit more, especially if they retain Aaron Rodgers. If they do, then they're going to have to look at the wide receiving core in the NFL draft. And by the way, there are a lot of great wide receivers coming out of college.
For Rudy Rude Dog Reyes, I am EMAC, Evan Makovsky. We wish you a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, a happy
Kwanzaa.
Year. Yes, happy Kwanzaa. Be safe during this holiday season. This is the Issues of Sports, and we will see you on the next episode.